The Cryptonaut podcast is brought to you by Cryptid Crate. Cryptid Crate is a monthly subscription box filled with various cryptozoology and paranormal-themed items to wear, display, and collect. You can expect a carefully curated box filled with creeptastic pieces from indie makers and artisans pertaining to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, UFOs, ghosts, and other cryptid and mysterious creatures. Be sure to visit cryptidcrate.com and at checkout use our promo code GRAMPUS, that's GRAMPUS, to get 20% off your first monthly box. All right, so while I got you here, there's a couple of quick announcements to go over before we get started with the show. So last week I got to do a special guest spot on the Monsters Among Us Beyond Patreon bonus episode. So our good buddy Derek from the Monsters Among Us podcast has a Patreon campaign going, and he brought me on for a bonus episode, which is super cool. So yeah, we got to talk. It was a great time talking with him. 2-hour episode. We talked about Asian vampires and Thunderbird, possible Mothman, devil monkeys. Had some Loveland Frogmen talk towards the end there. So you should totally check that out if you are a Patreon member. And if you're not a Patreon member, sign up, man. It's totally worth it. $4. You get a bunch of really cool extra content per month, video and audio, which is super cool. So yeah, that's the Monsters Among Us Patreon campaign. Check that out. And yeah, if any of you guys out there hear my episode, hit me up. Let me know what you think. It was a great time talking with Derek. I've been a huge fan of his podcast since day one. So definitely check that out. Also, too, we recently launched some merch over at TeePublic. The link for our TeePublic store will be in the description of this episode. We have our podcast logo up currently. We've got T-shirts, we've got long sleeves, we've got hoodies, we've got travel mugs, we've got coffee cups, stickers, all kinds of merch with our podcast logo on it. So yeah, if you want to help support the show, go ahead, grab yourself some merch. It it comes right back. The money comes right back to us. It totally helps us, keep the show going. And thank you too to everyone who has already made purchases. That is greatly appreciated. We can't thank you enough. It means the world to us to see the people supporting the show. So yeah, again, the link for our TeePublic store will be in the description of this podcast. So you can go check that out. And without further ado, Christopher, cue the creepy music. Cryptonaut podcast. I'm Mark Storrs, and with me as always is
Chris
and
Rob Morphy.
We are on the social medias, the Facebooks, which is currently going through some information with the FBI, but we'll see how that pans out.
Truly.
No big deal. Instagrams, Twitters. Yeah, if you're not following us on Instagram or Twitter, be sure to hit us up there. We have a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and they are all very nice and exciting and fun to talk to.
That is a nice change of pace.
Yeah, it is.
For the internet.
I didn't want. You know what? It really is,
it
because
is.
I have my personal Twitter account, and then I have the Cryptonaut Twitter account, and I go into the Cryptonaut account, and like everyone's cool, and things are creepy and fun and exciting, and people are sending emojis, and it's just a bunch of fun. And then I go to my personal one, I'm like, fuck, this sucks. This is the worst place ever.
The world is a hellscape dominated by lies and betrayal.
And of course, Instagram is always fun because it's a bunch of pictures, and I'm starting to learn how to do Instagram stories, so watch out for those.
Oh, I won't because I'm not on, but I'm excited for you.
I don't know what they are. I'm still learning.
Hey.
Yeah. Be sure to rate and review this podcast on iTunes and the Apple Podcast app. That helps us out greatly, and we have some reviews. So our first review here comes from Final Girl 627 with a 5-star review. The title of the review is The Creature from the Podcast, and it's cut off, so I can't read the rest of it. But she goes on to say, the old school creature feature brought to life. Love me a good monster story, and these guys have them. Love their format for stories of lesser-known cryptids. Great show, great hosts, very informative. Keep up the fantastic work.
Thank you, Final Girl.
Word.
Thank you very much, Final Girl.
Series of numbers that I don't remember.
That
was very
Final Girl
sweet.
627.
Aw.
The next one comes to us from A. Frisk, and it's a 5-star rating. It says, all the best. I sincerely do love this podcast. It takes the proper light comedic approach to a very goofy subject. Also, they hit home with some very obscure topics that even a nerd like myself hasn't much heard of.
Well,
Wow.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
They both hit on fundamental truths that I think are near and dear to us. Final Girl being that we are old school monster fans, and this is
Yeah.
like
We are.
we're digging through like what could be obscure old movies. It's just they're obscure old, ostensibly genuine accounts, and and the idea that we want to bring some of the more obscure thing or lesser known things to light.
Yeah.
Was what's touched on by the second gentleman.
A. Frisk.
So
A. Frisk.
thank you guys, and thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
It shows you care.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we do is the more obscure stuff. We've talked about this before. Eventually, we're going to get to more mainstream stuff,
And
But-
probably the weird tangents of the mainstream stuff.
Yeah, but for now,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just, I think it's more exciting to talk about lesser known stuff because there's not like a gigantic debate about like a photograph or a video. It's just like, hey, here's some cool stuff. Here you go.
I agree.
Perfect.
Well, there's tons more weird stuff than there's for known stuff.
That's true. There is.
Known is still not really known, and still.
Yeah, the known unknown,
The known
versus the
I mean-
unknown unknown.
I mean, yes.
Well, if we do something like Nessie at some point, which was my all-time favorite cryptid as a kid, I still am fascinated by it, and it's definitely bucket list material to make a pilgrimage to its shores. There's lots of weird sightings of land-based Nessies that are eating sheep and crossing roads and sunbathing that you don't often get to hear, and a lot of them aren't the prototypical plesiosaur. So I'm, giving a little hint of something we're going to do. So even when we tackle normal subjects in the future, we will probably be tackling the weirdest aspects of well-known subjects.
Yeah,
but
'cause-
anyway, I hope you guys continue to enjoy it because that's probably what we're going to continue to do.
Yeah, totally. So this week we got the El Verde entity, alien, cryptid, demon, or radioactive mutant.
Isn't that fun?
That's a fun one right there.
Mutant.
Okay, so we're going to get this started off here. In the autumn of 1973, a tragic incident took a turn towards the terrifying when a search for a missing child turned up instead a demonic entity that seems to have emerged from the bowels of hell itself.
Ooh. Itself.
So it stopped being fun pretty quick.
Jeez.
There's a missing child and something came from hell. Have a fantastic Monday morning,
Yeah, no.
everybody.
Oh, boy.
Welcome to a pleasant night's sleep. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys a little geography here.
All right.
Sprawling over 28,000 acres in the northeastern portion of Puerto Rico, El Yunque National Forest is a biologically diverse subtropical rainforest harboring hundreds of rare amphibians, reptiles, birds, and flora, many of which are indigenous only to this region. There are those, however, who believe that this foreboding forest may also be the domain of an unspeakable horror, one that might even be responsible for the disappearance of a child, or worse. During the waning days of October 1973, at approximately 9 p.m., Jose Alamar Sr. and the mother of his children, Ana Dominguez, drove down the rugged, unpaved roads toward El Verde, a densely forested area in the northern region of the El Yunque National Forest. They were accompanied on this journey by their daughter and some additional friends. The group was not on a sightseeing expedition. Their task was far more solemn. Just 3 months earlier, Dominguez and Alamar's youngest child, Jose Alamar Jr., had vanished without a trace in this area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it sucks.
Oof.
I mean, that just sucks. As fun as these stories can be, that patina
Yeah, a missing
weighs
child
heavy
is
for everyone.
Yeah, super dark. That sucks.
Jose Jr.'s family and friends were returning yet again to the scene of this potential crime, no doubt praying for a breakthrough in the search or perhaps even an outright miracle. The disappearance of Jose Jr. was as tragic as it was mysterious. Tragic due to the overwhelming anguish that afflicts any family following the sudden disappearance of a child. Mysterious not only because the whereabouts of the child was unknown, but also because the circumstances surrounding Jose's unexplained exodus has yet to be fully explained. For reasons undisclosed, Jose Sr. pulled in front of an isolated or possibly abandoned ranch house and began searching the grounds accompanied by his friends. One almost has to assume that this was the site of their son's disappearance, but there is nothing that indicates that specifically. I don't know why they were searching this area around this house, if this was the last place they were when they saw their son, or if they heard a rumor that maybe a child had been seen there. I just don't know, so we have to speculate.
Yeah,
but it is a pretty, it's a pretty desolate forest.
It's the only national forest that's a rainforest in the United States. That's one interesting thing. Right. It's not huge by comparison to other national parks, but it's still big, densely forested. It's occupied by the native Taino people, and they live in the area. And so there's lots of spiritual legends associated with it. And like all forests, I mean, if a child gets lost there, it can get very dangerous.
So maybe he's thinking that because, his son was lost and they had this ranch house, that maybe if his kid happened to find this ranch house, maybe his kid's hanging out there.
Sure.
All of these are valid.
That would make sense instead of hanging out in the middle of a forest. If you see...
Well, you're going to check like a shelter of some sort.
Yeah, some kind of shelter. So I guess it kind of makes sense why he would do it.
It does. It does. But at this point, like I say, we don't know if it had something directly to do with the actual vanishing of this child, or if it's just another place to search.
Okay.
Anna and her daughter had either requested or been commanded to remain in the car, which was parked near the roadside. The mother and daughter huddled together inside the vehicle as the men disappeared from view. Exhausted and despondent, Anna rested her head against the glass of the passenger side window. That was when she heard the voice of her missing son calling to her from the darkness beyond the glass. Startled, and probably a little bit elated, I mean, at the thought of hearing her son calling out, you have to imagine, Anna peered into the inky void but was unable to find the source of the sound. The voice of Jose Jr. emanated again, this time from the left side of the vehicle, the other side of the vehicle. Anna and her daughter clearly heard him repeat his request, open the door, I'm back. That's just got to be the best, but it is not going to continue to be the best moment.
Oh, man. Kids' voices in the darkness.
But when it's your son who's been missing for 3 months.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you kind of get your hopes up.
I mean, I can't imagine the kind of anguish and despair and confusion and terror and sorrow. There's just no way.
True dad moment, I lost my kid once at Billy B's. And I think he was maybe gone for 6 minutes, but I fucking lost it. And now, mind you, in Billy B's, they are literally corralled and tagged where they can't leave. So
because it's a child's play, it's like a Chuck E. Cheese type center.
Yeah, I lost him because the place was so big, but he was so small.
Right.
And that disappointing dad moment.
Well, sure,
but
it happens.
But then I was like, he's fine. He's in a pen. They're not gonna do anything. He can't leave. He literally can't leave. And no one can take him without me being there.
Still, it's got to be the kind of terror that you cannot compare to anything else.
Yeah, and so when my son's older and listens to this, I'm sorry, buddy, but we found you and you're safe, so there you go.
Right on. So they hear missing Jose Jr.'s voice say, open the car door, I'm back. Instinctively, Anna reached for the lock, but before she could disengage the mechanism, she noticed her daughter's eyes expanding, in unmistakable terror. With a trembling finger, the little girl pointed outside the window. Anna followed her child's gaze and gasped in horror. Looming over the windshield was a 7-foot-tall, shadow-shrouded, and impossibly thin non-human entity, which Anna described as having, and this is her own quote, a huge egg-shaped head, long pointy ears, and 2 huge black oval-shaped eyes. Anna would further state that no other facial features were visible as the entity's visage was cloaked almost entirely in darkness. So that's not the shit you want to see at that point.
No.
Or any point.
No, and it's looming over your windshield? So is it standing on the hood of the car?
It's so thin that the way it's described, it was just so thin that it could not possibly be a human being. Just ridiculously thin, well over normal proportion height. Yeah. A head that's bigger than what a human head would usually be, shaped like an egg, these giant pointy Vulcan ears, these huge black eyes that are just staring, lidless eyes that are staring down at them. So at first she has this burst of joy at hearing the voice of her missing child, and then she sees this thing, which understandably a lot of people think might be a paranormal entity rather than something biological, just based on its description alone.
Right.
Okay. The terrified pair stared silently at the unblinking eyes of the ebony fiend when it suddenly lunged forward, placing its large, 3-fingered, chicken claw-like hand flat against the windshield. I don't know why it did that, but that sucks.
Yeah. It's like it reaches out and just
you almost feel like it's like one of those sloppy hits.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't it doesn't say it's slime or anything, but when you just see a 3-fingered
just smacking your
huge
windshield,
hand just go bloop, and it looks like a black chicken claw, a talon of a poultry.
Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah, it's
talon
grody.
of a poultry.
Which is possibly a metal album.
Oh, it could be.
Talon of a poultry? Come on, you'd buy it.
It's the next Brutal Truth record. Double live.
Oh, my God. All right. It was then that Anna's maternal instincts took over, and she began slamming on the car horn and shrieking for her boyfriend to come save them. Just when it seemed as if their fates had been sealed, Jose Sr. and his makeshift posse came running from around the back of the house, but by the time they arrived at the car, the thing, whatever it may have been, had vanished. The panicked woman and child told the men about the creature they had seen. Most disturbingly, they both swore that the voice they heard was that of Jose Jr. However, Anna was unsure if they had actually heard the voice audibly or if it had been implanted in their minds telepathically. It's interesting that she notes that.
Yeah, that's a weird...
Because she's like, it's like you feel like you hear it.
Right.
And she couldn't see the thing's mouth, if it even had one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that we'll get to that in a minute, but, you know... It makes you think, what kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Could
That's weird.
Create this kind of impression? We'll talk about that in a second. It is unreported and difficult to imagine what Jose Sr.'s reaction was to his family's unbelievable tale. But he was likely swayed towards sympathy simply by the sheer terror in the eyes of his wife, or common-law wife technically, and daughter. So ends the only official recorded run-in with the El Verde entity. But that leaves us with questions as to what the hell Ana Dominguez and her daughter encountered back in October of 1973. Some of the conclusions are pretty obvious, but I'll just go through them and then we'll get to it. There are some who assume that based on the fact that it was able to communicate to the women, that this thing was not a traditional animalistic cryptid, but an intelligent being. But what kind of intelligent being? Based on its disturbing appearance, as well as the implied cruelty of speaking to the woman using the voice of a missing loved one, there are those who have speculated that the El Verde entity is clearly of demonic origin. The hypothesis further implies that the creature's intention was to lure the women out of the car in order to abscond off with them in the same way that they likely did with Jose Alamar Jr. 3 months earlier. What's interesting to note, and we talked about the Taino people that live in the region, they do think that certain mountains in this national park are infested with spirits, but mostly good spirits. So it's not like there's this thing called the Yuquiyu. I might be mispronouncing it, but that's like a noble spirit of the mountain. So it's not like there's, at least as far as my research could tell, evil paganistic spiritual entities. But the people that are speculating that it's a demon aren't coming at it from a paganistic point of view. They're coming at it from a Catholic point of view.
So, but the spirits in the mountain, that wouldn't be anything related to Catholicism.
Well, no, but
so that's.
I mean, but you also know that all indigenous beliefs are eventually integrated by missionaries into the current framework. I mean, that's the way of the Crusader. That's the way of the missionary.
Right.
But as far as I could tell, I mean, where there's evil or good spirits, there's usually evil spirits. If there's one thing all older religions have, it's balance usually.
Oh, yeah, you can't have, it's not one or the other.
Yeah, it's not usually just a multitude of vile and a multitude of glorious, good and noble.
Right.
So, but I don't know much about Taino beliefs or what other things might be going on in the region. But it's worth mentioning that that there is some belief in spiritual entities living in that area.
All right, so the first possibility here is a demon.
So yes.
Well, maybe.
Possibly.
Those of a more secular predisposition also acknowledge that the being's evident intelligence separates it from traditional cryptids, but are less inclined to think of the thing as devilish and are more disposed to believe it is of extraterrestrial origin. These theories are less likely to ascribe specific motives to the El Verde entity's actions, though one would not be going out on too treacherous a limb to assume its ultimate intention was likely the abduction of the women, just because that's what aliens fucking do. They love to steal people, take their ovums, take their eggs,
that's
make the hybrid babies. It's the alien way.
Yeah,
we all know that.
Tinker around with butts.
Probins.
Tinkering with butts.
Probins Jenkins, the famous alien prober.
Okay, so demon, alien. All right.
So here's something that I stumbled across. and this is where we get into the Marvel Comics portion of the evening, and that is I found this PDF that was released by the U.S. Energy Group, or whatever, organization, and it says about the El Verde site specifically. It is situated in Study Area 4 of a facility known as the El Verde Field Station, a research facility that occupies 173 acres. The El Verde Field Station began operations as the El Verde Rainforest Project in 1963. The U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, a predecessor to the agency of the U.S. Department of Energy, that's what I was stumbling over a second ago, the U.S. Department of Energy, sponsored the project through the Puerto Rico Nuclear Center, later renamed the Center for Energy and Environmental Research, at the University of Puerto Rico. The project emphasized research on forest ecosystem processes such as nutrient cycling, energy flow, and response to gamma radiation.
Oh, you don't.
So, of course, the Hulk's there. They're making baby Hulks.
Or this super sketched out tall thing, telepathic.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, radiation gives cancer and not
radiation
powers.
Physically can change things.
It depends on the level.
You don't know.
Okay,
now, let me continue here.
Okay.
Radioactive isotopes were applied to the soil and vegetation at El Verde during the next several years to conduct a variety of projects related to the effects of gamma radiation on rainforest vegetation. Something we're all curious about. I mean, I don't, for a day, just not wonder, stop and look at a rainbow or a butterfly or a Taco Bell drive-thru and say, how is gamma radiation going to affect this?
Yeah.
How quickly will tumors form in this Taco Bell that I'm eating at?
Yeah.
What happens if you get radioactive isotopes and put it in a sweet Angelo's pizza? Ooh. Does it grow wings
and fly into your
and
mouth?
Teeth, yeah.
And then eat you from the inside out.
I wouldn't want it to fly in my mouth.
No, that's too much. I want to judge just how much I put in my mouth.
Just seems like you shouldn't be doing this to a rainforest. I mean, even in what year was this? 63? I mean, okay,
it started in 63.
Maybe they didn't know any better, but I don't know. A couple guys die. You should be like, bad idea.
Well, I mean, I don't know if anyone died during this research project.
I just assumed that.
Yeah, now you just
you're ascribing deaths that we don't know about.
But you made a movie in your head. And
no,
I
did. You're right. I did. It was kind of like
after all those deaths.
It was kind of like
wait, what?
It was kind of
wait
like,
a minute.
It was like Outbreak and like The Walking Dead and like
and it might still be there, waiting to happen.
So okay, maybe we can't necessarily judge their approach to testing radioactive isotopes in the rainforest, but we are a future people now, and we know that that's not a good thing to do.
Well, they did eventually stop the radioactive research in this area.
Thank God. But
radiological surveys conducted at El Verde in the 1980s and 90s identified areas of elevated radioactivity that remained from earlier research. By 1996, decontamination and cleanup efforts had removed all contamination from the site except for a tree in Study Area 4. The tree, a mataiba, had been injected with cesium-137 in 1968 and required periodic monitoring and access controls. So
wait,
I know. What the fuck
does that even mean? Yeah. Access controls.
I know. I understand, and I apologize to our listeners that we're going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but I feel like we have to.
No, we have to discuss this.
I don't know much about cleaning nuclear waste, especially nuclear waste that was introduced into an ecosystem specifically to fuck it up to see what happens.
I don't know.
The U.S. government,
of course.
Like, is there like a kind of vacuum? They just kind of suck shit up.
Yeah,
like,
where's the atomic vacuum?
There isn't.
They can't. You got to cancel it out with something.
Yeah,
I feel like, right?
But here's the further
because
question.
we're scientists and we know stuff.
I think a lot of it, though,
super brilliant,
is kind of like an Onondaga Lake, how they removed all the pollution from the bottom of the lake by dredging it up. I think it's almost like you have to dredge the soil.
How do you dredge a rainforest?
But then where does it go when you dredge it up?
I don't remove.
I mean, if you dredge
it, just goes into the air.
Anything I don't know.
You put it in barrels and then try to store it somewhere. But why?
In water?
No, I got to stop here
okay.
because we don't know anything about decontamination. We'll admit that. Why could they not fix this one fucking tree? Like, what about this tree
they had to
was
be
so
monitored.
resolute in being gamma irradiated or cesium irradiated?
It says that they introduced something into the tree, right?
Yeah, and now it's fucking permanently
had to be monitored
radioactive.
And something about access
controls.
controls.
Does that worry you?
What does that mean?
It sounds like the tree has fucking eyes and it says hi to you when you walk by it.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't sound good.
Hey, Mark.
What's going on, dude? Okay, but I wonder if this radioactive, if maybe it got into the root system, and maybe that's why they couldn't get it. Because, I mean, apparently it's just one tree.
Yeah, which is still weird.
Which it seems like to me, like fucking burn the tree or cut it down.
All right, so now here's where the fiction writer in me that loves stories. You can't help but to go to Stranger Things in your mind, where there's like a government facility and they open a portal to the filthy, dandruff-ridden Upside Down, and scummy creatures exist there. And of course, one of the portals in Stranger Things is through a tree in a random forest. You almost have to wonder, and I know it's not real. I get that. But the fact that there's a radioactive tree that they continue to monitor in this once, experimental region, the Sector 4 or whatever, that they just have to keep an eye on. And then there happens to be in that same area a child that went missing and an unexplained entity that can mimic things that you love to try to get you to open a door and give it access.
Sounds an awful goddamn like Stranger Things.
Except that this happened in 1973.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe they could have done research and, they were talking about like the Montauk incident and like MK Ultra and shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what they stumbled across along the way? And maybe this is one of the ones. Though this is a fairly obscure case, but I'm less concerned with how inspired, the brothers Duff or whatever were.
The tree is interesting. I wonder why they couldn't.
The idea that this place, this is a setup. Totally. Talk about like old school movies.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like Hell of the Living Dead or something like that, where the pollution just wreaks havoc. There's no reason to associate them except for that they both happened in the same region.
Yeah,
it's weird.
But all right, let's get back to the actual entity.
Okay.
I don't know if I buy extraterrestrial. People always love when something is slightly more intelligent than your average animal. They're like, well, it can't be from this planet because human beings are the only intelligent things here. I feel like that's kind of arrogant. It seems to be born in the evidence, which I get because we don't know of a lot of species on Earth that like can outclass us at, pinochle or some shit. I don't know, but
pinochle.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to come up with something.
Cards.
Are you better at cards than me, crabgrass? But there's no reason to assume that this is extraterrestrial based on the fact that we don't know how intelligent other things can be that might live in the ocean or irradiated forest.
Yeah, well, I mean, just like saying drugs, it's going to be an option always. I feel like
just like diabetes,
9 out of 10 things.
So I think we have to just kind of dismiss that one out of hand. No UFO.
Yeah, no.
So I mean, there's no other reported something.
I mean, if this area of Puerto Rico was a hotbed for UFOs, then okay, I would get it. But I mean, there's any reported cases, anything like that.
In Puerto Rico, plenty.
Right.
Scads.
But in this
there's
area,
always a UFO flap going on there, but not in this specific area that I've been able to find at this specific time.
If it's a cryptid.
If it's a cryptid, it's just an unknown animal.
Right.
Basically, simply, that's it. If it's an animal, there are certain things from the South American jungle and even Scottish folklore where these creatures are allegedly able to imitate the sound of a crying baby or something, and it's supposed to lure the maternal instinct or even the protective instinct in a man, a maternal instinct in a woman to say, it's a baby in jeopardy, I have to go save it, and that's really a predator's way of seducing a victim into its grasp.
Is that what are those things from Japan that do that? Is
it the Kappa, maybe?
Yeah. Do they do that, or am I making that up?
Well, they might.
Am I transposing something out of that?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know all the things Kappa do. I know they have little bowls on their head, and if you knock the water out, they fucks them up. They do your bidding.
Yeah.
And that's my Kappa knowledge right there.
All right, well, I could be getting my cryptid lore completely mistaken.
But it's not even relegated to like one continent or another. I know South America has some. I know Europe has some. Maybe all over. But that would be an adaptation that would make a lot of sense in a predator.
Predatorily speaking, yeah. It's kind of like us doing like a duck call or like a turkey call.
Yeah,
it's the same
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Except that it's a baby, and everyone. I mean, even us. I mean, you're a father. Chris and I are hardened bachelors, whatever that would mean. But if I heard a baby crying randomly in a shrub, I would go to try to help said baby.
Dude, when I hear a baby crying in a Walmart, I'm like, why is no one taking care of that baby?
Well, sure.
What is your problem? Be a better parent.
Fair.
Don't lose your kids at Billy Bees. Like I did. Yeah, that's right.
Bring it home.
I
Don't
hold
be
myself.
like me.
I hold myself to a higher standard. When I hear a crying baby, I require someone to take care of that child.
Fair enough.
Well,
that is kind of a creepy, really, really creepy, but kind of genius way for an animal to lure in a human, though.
But I still don't think of this as a typical. First off, there are obviously bipedal animals, but this is humanoid. It's got a large head, which indicates it probably has a large brain. It has large eyes. When you have large eyes, you need a lot of brain matter to process the input into those eyes.
The damn thing is so skinny and tall, though.
I mean, it's
7 foot
clearly
tall, super
inhuman.
skinny, yeah.
But I'm just thinking, and of course we're all animals. All
Actually,
biological things are animals. But I don't know if I think of this as an unintelligent animal that can mimic humans.
It almost has the characteristics of Vegetable Man.
I was kind of going down that road a little bit too.
And didn't I can't say the word Vegetable Man. Did I say it right?
Vegetable.
Didn't he have pointy ears too?
Yeah.
And he had hypnotizing eyes.
Yes, he did.
Son of
Swirly eyes.
Is this our first crossover where like this could be a possible sighting of another cryptid
Of a similar type? Well, they're both impossibly thin. Though the Vegetable Man, in all fairness, was literally a stalk of fucking celery. Like, that thing was so thin that it was just absurd. Like, it should have flown away like a kite.
This does have the characteristics, though. Tall, skinny,
this is super
ears,
thin. It's got large eyes. Well, this has more traditional pointy ears, and, well, I guess the Vegetable Man had big, weird, branchy, rabbity ears.
Yeah.
But I guess what makes me want there to be an association there, as I said, is the fact that there's that fuck-sucking radioactive tree that they have to monitor. And in my mind, it's like people in yellow hazmat suits with M16s, like making sure it doesn't unroot itself like
and
the
walk away.
like from hell it came, that monster from the 50s that was a giant moon-faced tree going around killing, villagers.
You can't really ignore that bit of information.
No, that's like, is that tree still alive? And if so, why?
And is it under guard?
Yeah, and shouldn't it have been destroyed by now?
Why do they monitor it?
It's got to be.
Why didn't they just chop it down and deal with it?
There's got to be something in it that either it's blackmailing people. Maybe
that's what I was waiting for. We started with the disappearance of a child, which is the most horrible thing ever. And I'm thinking to myself, how are we going to bring this to anything besides horrible missing children? And then Chris came up with, thank you. Thank you very much.
There's got to be something to it where it's, I don't know.
Well, you know what?
Some knowledge, or it's got something there's a reason why they're not destroying it.
The first thing that popped in my mind, again, pure imaginative speculation, was that there's like a notch in the tree that's just there, but that can kind of slop open vaginally, if you will, and in it sleeps the Verde entity. Like, it's part of the tree, it's part plant, it's gotten its intelligence both from the nutrients of the forest and the gamma radiation, and it lives in the tree, they keep a watch on it, and mostly it doesn't get out, but when it does get out, little kids beware.
I mean, cinematically speaking, that's a great movie.
Yes, that's reality speaking.
That's terrible.
It's a bunch of shit, and I know it, but I can't help but that's where my imagination instantly goes.
But
it's a minion of the tree,
or
part of the tree.
Part of the tree, or maybe it's the spirit of the tree that can now go and wreak vengeance on the damage that the government did to the forest.
Enforcer.
The Forest Enforcement Agency.
I mean, I like where we're going with this cinematically. I think it's a good idea. And you have to draw something to the tree if this thing is being contained or whatever. Like,
if they got rid of every other piece of radiation, and instead of just chopping down and burning this tree or bringing it to the lab for testing or whatever they would do, that they just keep it under watch.
So it's almost like this thing has to somehow... I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it would make sense if whatever this thing is tied to this tree somehow.
Not really. In fact, I'm the first to say that's the loosest, most tenuous connection ever. It is not associated with the tree.
I'm taking
I found this piece of information out completely separate from this other piece of information, and I can't help but to conflate them because that's what my mind wants to do.
Well, because it's hard to ignore.
Right.
Yeah, but
absolutely.
If you take consider you're in the same area with two anomalies.
Right.
So it's not that far of a stretch to be like they could be related. It is a stretch. But same area, two anomalies. Could they be connected?
Well,
possibly.
But it's no different than a bunch of people seeing shit in the sky and something falling.
Right.
And they associate the fallen
object. And then 2 days
object.
later, some weird shit fucking happens.
Okay, so
they see something, and it's like, well, it's not a stretch to imagine that.
I wanted to marry these two together in some unholy tree blackmailing union, but I guess maybe we can because we don't really have the information for it.
We certainly don't, because this is a very sparse account, and tracking down additional information is almost impossible. But what I wouldn't rule out is the sheer amount of radiation that was likely deposited in this Sector 4 region of El Verde between 63 and 73 when this occurrence happened. Who knows what that might have affected? Like, not this one tree still stands, so that makes it something that'll stir the curiosity. And chances are the monitoring isn't obviously with armed guards; it's with scientists checking the sap in the soil like every 3 months or something. But that aside, the forest was literally gamma irradiated, just to see what would happen to it for an extended period of time. And then a specific tree was injected in '68. And that became a whole separate thing. So who knows what radiation might have done to something there?
So, because I don't know much about radiation.
Well, I know I learned from Toho Studios.
Okay, so...
And Marvel Comics.
In science, does radiation actually, I know it can cause mutations.
There's gigantism. But mutations never happen in what's exposed. It always happens in the next generation.
Right, but isn't it generally I guess because Chernobyl.
There's Chernobyl worms that are pretty effing big, as shown in the horrible Godzilla 98.
And birth defects from Chernobyl.
Yeah, and that horrible birth defects.
Doesn't it generally just end in terrible cancer?
No, when Peter Parker got bit by the spider, that's not powers, that's leukemia.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, that's how that works. Yeah.
So I wonder if whatever... I guess I don't have the information for
what cancer looks like when it gets 2 feet, starts walking around, and imitating a missing child.
It's like that X-Files episode?
Where cancer became
there's like a dude that was
cancer incarnate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's scummy.
Or it's a dark elf.
Or it's a dark elf.
Yeah, really.
And that's the other thing, too.
Or it's dark elf.
It is a forest with a lot of spiritual history, as we were saying, even though we don't know most of it. And a lot of it's very positive. But then again, what I've read about the spiritual history, not surprisingly, was found on tourist sites. So I go to government websites. There's not a lot in the news because the government is going to tell you about national parks and things that were there. That's how I stumbled across this whole Atomic Energy Commission scenario. But then the tourist sites are going to tell you, and the local town people say, "Oh, it's in the dwarf forest, covered in mists and gentle, rivers. There's the good, spirit of the mountain that wants to hug you and snuggle and maybe give you a handy if you get along well enough and send you home with smiles."
But it turns out it steals your kid and tries to coax your common law wife and daughter out of the car to probably eviscerate them
in the worst way possible by emulating the missing kid. So is it psychic? Did it look into her mind and think, what is her most burning desire, draw it out, and then use it against her?
They would make me think it might go towards
paranormal.
They said it was outside, and they said it lunged, right?
Well, yeah, it reached forward quickly, palm against the windshield.
Right.
Big giant chicken claw.
It jetted.
Well, it jetted once she started slamming on the horn and screaming.
Maybe it was just that it tried to communicate. Maybe the kid's trapped in the fucking other side of the tree, and this thing was just trying to fucking help.
That's interesting.
It didn't know how to fucking help.
If this were if this weren't a bad 1950s atomic scare movie, and it were conversely an episode written by Rod Serling of The Twilight Zone,
exactly.
The twist would be you fear something because you find it ugly and terrifying.
Right, but
when
it's
really
trying to help you,
it's trying to it doesn't know how to communicate with you, so it communicates to you with the voice of the thing you want to hear because it wants to bring you to it.
Yeah.
And then you react in terror and noise and shrieking and honking, and you scare this gentle ebony creature of the forest away that just happens to be 7 foot tall, clawed, and horrible looking.
Trying to help.
And it was just like, man, I want to bring your kid home. I don't know if I believe that, but it's sweet irony. It was.
It's a happy end. Well, I guess
it's not a happy ending.
No, but
it's don't be bigoted against the ugly things because they might have beautiful intentions.
Yeah, but they got chicken claws and they're standing on your fucking car.
Well, no, they're leaning over your car. They're about 7 feet tall, pressing against your windshield, using your missing child's voice to get you to unlock the door. It didn't say get out of the car. It said unlock the door, which implies maybe it wasn't strong enough to open the door. It knows what a lock is,
right.
So that's interesting. And once it's unlocked, does it feed on you? Does it hug you? Does it bring you to the other world?
Trying to help.
I would be curious to I'd be curious to see the different folklore in the area. I
would love to be able to find some.
It could be if it's some weird forest witch or something.
Right.
I could kind of see that, or but like you said, demonic possibly.
There is a rich history of folklore in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Obviously in the 90s they just basically spontaneously gave birth to the legend of the chupacabra, as emblazoned on Chris's shirt.
Yeah.
And that's where the original stories of the lizard-skinned, porcupine-back, kangaroo-legged, red-eyed monstrosity, not the hairless dog of Texas fame, which is the liar's chupacabra, as I call it.
The
Every time I see-
dingo.
There's a lot of great legends from Puerto Rico that... So it wouldn't surprise me that if there were from this densely forested region that had been preserved, because it's a national park, traditional lore of what was said to live there long before, maybe even into prehistory.
Yeah.
But I don't know it because I couldn't find it.
Yeah. And the tree obviously is interesting because it just seems like...
That just struck me as fascinating.
Now, I do see some information here, though, that in 2018, the radioactive materials license for the tree study in Area 4 was terminated. Termination was based on radiological conditions meeting the criteria for protectiveness. The tree is no longer regulated and has been released for unrestricted use. That's a weird sentence for a tree.
Yeah.
That's a weird sentence for a tree.
So did it finally just leave in 2007?
It fulfilled its mission.
Yeah, I'm done here. Or did they finally, were they able to kill it? Were they finally able to lure it out of its wooden womb, murder it for all its evil deeds with the government's full acumen and resources, finally able to torch it, burn it, and then use, of course, a Catholic priest that was in army fatigues to further bless and hallow the site, and then finally said, this tree is clean.
This is a great trailer to a movie I want to see.
It is open for, what do they say here? It is no longer regulated and released for unrestricted use.
It just seems so weird for a tree.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Use.
Why,
What do you mean?
why have they not? Why did they just not cut it down and study it?
I mean,
if
is this
it's full of
is this thing a
radiation?
goddamn redwood or something?
Is it the rarest tree that's ever been?
Yeah.
So I mean, it had to have been exhibiting something abnormal that they were wanting to keep an eye on, but it wasn't necessarily probably harmful, but just...
I mean, if the tree's producing some, like, I don't know, like phantom power or something, it's just shooting energy out of it. And
dude,
it's like,
if
holy
you let
shit,
me live,
look.
I'll leave a pizza here once a week.
Yeah.
All right.
They were attempting to amend the NRC license. I'm not sure what that is. Basis for application. In so doing, here's basically what a group wanted to extend the protection of the tree because they found that it was still a dangerous level, the total effective dose equivalent for the area of elevated gamma activity around the tree was still dangerous using a worst-case scenario. Now, I know that's a really convoluted, confusing thing
confusing statement
to read.
Yeah.
But basically, what I'm thinking, and maybe I'm off a little bit, but that some group saying, nope, this tree's good, the tree's clean. As we said, Zelda Rubinstein came down, said the tree is clean from the dead. I think she's dead.
I mean,
I
this
think
tree
she's
better
so.
produce fucking gold.
But another group was like, based on worst case scenarios, this is still a gamma irradiated, cesium filled tree, and goddamn it, we should watch it. Which, when you read between the lines, is it still has the horrible irradiated tree demon. And we must be very cautious to protect the people that live in this area.
I mean, just burn the fucker down.
If it was only so simple.
That's why I think it's a complex. I think there's an
story behind the
underground
story.
fight for. It's like the underworld fight, that the world we don't know about. Where
Is there like a pagan
fairies are fighting the fucking
cult that's there to defend the tree? Like, no, the tree must live. The tree,
Is
the
this
tree
like
harbors the dark god, the coming of the one that Lovecraft
Is this like a
proposed.
weird, like a subplot from like Hellboy 2, The Golden Army,
It sure-
or something? Like it's kind of what it sounds
If
like.
this movie got made, Del Toro would be the only one to do
Oh,
it
yeah,
justice.
totally.
Clearly,
It's like there's unaware by humans. A fight rages on between the doodle and the deedles, and we're like, and the tree's at the center of this fight.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if the U.S. government was in charge of negotiating with the fairies and the wee folk for peace over the El Yunque tree?
This was covered in bright.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, not okay, sort of covered in bright. You guys ever? You guys? see
I'm
Bright?
not super horny to see
No.
Bright.
You know, it's not terrible.
I
But
like orcs.
I don't know. It's I don't know. Makes you uncomfortable, I guess.
Okay.
Just kind of, I don't know.
That's not what I'm looking for in a cinema
I
experience.
don't know. I didn't hate it. It wasn't bad.
Right.
But yeah, maybe there's some sort of elven folklore-ish type of situation.
Boy, we are going out on limbs today.
Yeah, we are. It's
that's part of what's fun. Let's draw this all back to what we have.
We have just the incident with this creature.
I assume
the two
that Anna would not make a story up. A woman, anybody is not beyond, weaving tales, but a woman that just recently lost her child, going back to a place ostensibly where he went missing from, and, her husband and friends are still searching. She's waiting in the car, praying that they turn up something, and something positive, no doubt. I don't see her making something up. Why I would rule out hallucination and or mental illness and or just an anxiety, induced nervous breakdown, which she should clearly and easily suffer from, and it would be justified, is because two people saw it,
right?
And her daughter actually saw it first. Now, even though we don't specifically hear from her, because I don't even know what age she was, I don't know if she was a young teen or a grammar school kid. She saw it first. So when mom's about to unlock the door and be like, "Oh my God, my baby's home," she's like, "Oh."
Yeah, so you
and then they see it together.
You have the two people experiencing this.
That lends credibility to a small degree.
It does.
It doesn't prove anything,
no,
but it makes me less inclined to think it's just a hoax.
Right. I mean, they don't really have, again, much to gain.
Nothing to gain. And the notoriety doesn't help them in the search for their child.
No. Was the kid ever found?
Not that I could find. Oof, that's the problem. When I say it was mysterious, not only because any child missing is mysterious, but also because the facts. It's not to say that they're not in a police station somewhere in Puerto Rico in a cold case file, hopefully not destroyed. And it's not to say somebody, maybe a listener from that region, couldn't do some research for us, and boy, wouldn't that be helpful and awesome.
That would be great if you did do that. That would be sweet.
But we, from New York State, have no access to this.
No. I'd almost be curious, too, is the numbers, I wonder what the numbers of missing children in that forest specifically are.
Missing people in general, missing children specifically.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because if there is a trend at this might be the first time. It's sort of like the black-eyed kid phenomenon in that, they're always saying, "Open the door for me." And, if you don't, they apparently can't get you. But you never know what happens to those who do.
Because there's no record, yeah.
And, of course, we'll be doing that at some point. That's a very expansive legend. But this is similar in the sense that it apparently needs to be let in or simply isn't strong enough to open the door, or like a vampire requires some sort of permission, which, again, implies some sort of paranormal origins. Right. And then you think to yourself, how many times has the door been opened and we will just never hear that story? So this thing could have been seen by maybe dozens of people. Well, and maybe before they just were never...
Before
they didn't survive. Yeah, they didn't survive to make a report.
Right. Or they had to make a pact with it to not tell the tale.
Oh, again?
Like the gargoyles in
and Tales from the Dark Side.
Right. Dark Side with
Ray Don Chong.
Ray Don Chong.
Yeah.
Okay, we're stretching it again.
Of course we are.
We're stretching it.
We don't have much. This is the Stretch Armstrong of stories because it's really hard because there's so many tantalizing tidbits that are technically unrelated except for geography.
Right.
And so you can't help. I mean, human beings want patterns. We string things together.
Well, that is
us. That is how we survive. That is how we've destroyed the environment and taken over the world. And that's the deal. It's the good and the bad of the human race is that we seek patterns, find them, and establish them whether or not they're justified. In this case, these things are so close that it's almost impossible. It begs you to try to link them, even though we all intellectually and intuitively understand that we are really reaching here.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, there's nothing fun about a missing child, but what's interesting about a creature like this in an intentionally irradiated national forest, which, how the hell are you doing this in a national forest? I know it was 63 and there were no rules, but come on.
Yeah, no one gave fucks back then.
No, scientists could do whatever they want.
I would think, not that there were a lot of dead bodies, but I would assume that with the handling of these type of isotopes, that eventually there would be some sort of indication of hey, Ted, this isn't good.
Well, if they had to
My
decontaminate,
teeth fell out. I have blue ears.
There's probably some cancer in the area. If people are getting water and food from that area and it's deeply irradiated, and then the animals are eating the plants,
dude, you're never gonna get that out of the water. That's gonna pollute the water table for generations. It's never gonna get out of the water table.
Oh, I'm sure it's a huge. I'm sure it's like the Flint, Michigan of Puerto Rico. Like just an environmental, government-caused nightmare that could have totally been avoided, should never have happened, and yet there it is, and the people that live there are the ones that have to suffer with it.
I'd also be interested to know today what's going on with that area.
Absolutely.
Because, Chernobyl is still basically just abandoned. The same thing with was it Fukushima?
I couldn't find any
right?
reports. Oh yeah, but Fukushima. I mean, that was bad.
That
wasn't
not
that long
ago. But I mean, even Chernobyl wasn't. I mean, how many years ago was
mid
Chernobyl?
86.
But it's still totally just desolate, right?
Oh well,
there's nothing.
You can't. Like animals have infested. I guess repopulated
things
the
are
area
in there, but you can't remain there. Like you're not advised to.
Yeah, you're not going to live there cancer free. You're not going to build your dream cottage in Chernobyl.
Wasn't there a thing? Maybe this could be told as some clickbait Facebook bullshit. But wasn't there somewhere that they were doing like tours?
Sure,
like up to the area.
You
but
wear
not
a radiation patch. You make sure you're safe.
I don't know. Man.
You see the desolation of it all. Sure, I mean anything you can monetize, people are going to monetize. And the local community probably doesn't have a hell of a lot that they can turn a profit on. So,
well, that's right. So they're going to do it.
I mean, the people that don't have much self-preservation skills and are curious, why not exploit them? I don't hold it against them.
True.
But I don't know how that relates to Sector 4 of the El Verde section of the El Yunque National Forest in Puerto Rico.
All right, so it's a dark elf. It's a demon.
So it's
good. It's bad.
It's a forest witch.
I mean, it's probably bad. We don't know that. I mean, I love that. I love the Twilight Zone irony of what you're suggesting that, it's like, here's the sound of your child. This is what I want you to, know and come with me.
But your angle of it's like a turkey or duck call. Like
but it sounds exactly like. How would it know?
And here's the
unless
other,
it killed the child and the child's voice.
That's the thing. It can only know, assuming this is all
that's the
true,
only way.
It can know in two ways. The first is what Chris said. It killed the child. It knows the sound of the child's voice, or kidnapped and is holding it somewhere. It knows the sound of the child's voice, and it somehow, by scent, like an animal or something, recognizes that this is its family, the child's family, and is using it to beckon them. 1. 2, this has the ability to extract thoughts from a mind because both. I mean, yes, people are like ESP. It's crazy telekinetics, but that almost makes more sense. It'd be more likely to take the sounds from the mother's head that it wants to hear to use that as a temptation than it would happen to be, I happened to take your kid 3 months ago. I am a perfect mimic of his voice.
Right.
I'm saying something that's not just random like, Mommy, help me, or help me, or something the kid would have said to the monster or about the monster, like, stop, leave me alone.
Right.
It's saying, unlock the door. So it's making a logical extension of what it evidently wants, which is an open door.
The Predator did that in the Predator movies.
It did.
Yeah.
And again, this predates the Predator.
It does. This is true.
Though I'm pretty sure this thing has camouflage skills much in the same way.
Active camo is one of my favorite things. The Predator. I love it.
It's got a wrist nuke.
Yeah, and it bends light, and then it's like, ho, 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 ho.
Maybe that's why they didn't kill the tree.
Oh.
He's like, dude's got a wrist nuke.
Dude's got a wrist nuke. All right, so this is bizarre. We obviously don't have any conclusion to it.
No.
Because there isn't a conclusion to have.
The report is one fucking paragraph long. That's it. And I've searched and searched, and it's all I could find.
All right.
And it was published on a website of ufology from Puerto Rico. It's mentioned in the actual article, which we'll be putting up simultaneously with this podcast. Yeah. So this article will not exist until the podcast goes up. So it's our first conjoined release.
It's a dual launch.
And so you'll be able to check out the original Spanish language thing. But it's very sparse. But somebody that might be able to be on the ground in that area, and somebody that speaks Spanish, which is something none of us do, and that maybe could find out more about the circumstances, and maybe, God willing, the kid showed back up. And maybe there's a happy ending. I know that's just wishful thinking on my part, but God, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But what made me want to do this story is that it's such an interesting creature. What it does is haunting and terrible, using the voice of a missing child on the mother and his sister. And then the fact that the theories range from the most outlandishly paranormal to the most outlandishly secular, ufological. Right. And then when I stumbled across this report from the Atomic Energy Commission, or the Department of Energy, whatever it is now, that has nothing to do with it, but is right there.
But it's kind of weird.
I felt like all these things came together. It was a story that demanded to be told, even if there's more missing spaces than facts.
It's too weird to have two anomalies like that in the same area, though. It's just too weird.
This is like a 22-page report that has like 17 of the pages redacted. It's what's not there that keeps it so intriguing.
Yeah,
but but I felt there was just enough that it would be worth for us to explore.
The only thing that would make it even worse if there was like a spat of missing kids.
Yeah, and that might be the case.
That's what I was wondering, if this is something
That would be
if
forget it.
If within that year, like 20 kids went missing, like, well, all
or
right,
even
fuck,
between
that's...
like when they started irradiating it in the early 60s.
Right.
And then even beyond, because who's to say it ended in 73?
Yeah, well, any abnormal amount. I mean, anything over a couple is really abnormal in a few years.
Because it's not a huge national park.
That's what I mean. Like,
There is, I haven't...
especially in a national park.
I haven't watched it yet.
Especially an American United States national park.
There is a documentary out there. It's called like The Missing 411, I think, and it's about like people that go missing in national parks. I haven't seen it yet. It's been in my queue for the last like 6 months, but I wouldn't mind checking that out. I mean, obviously, I don't think it really pertains to this story.
Would
but
be interesting.
It does pertain to it, and that people missing in national parks, though.
This story is ostensibly about a kid that went missing in a national park. So if they mention it, that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
So I promise our listeners this: if we come across any additional information, if somebody is able to send us anything we can do on a follow up, we are just as curious as you are. And I know this is kind of the equivalent of auditory blue balls, because what we really have thrown is a lot of shit on the wall and just saw what stick, and almost none of it does, but that doesn't matter. It's still fucking fascinating, and we are just as curious as you. So if there's ever any more, we will not leave you hanging.
No, not at all. So be sure to hit us up if you have any information about this. There you have it. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to follow us on the social medias. Again, Facebook, couple of problems with the feds right now. No big deal. We'll keep our eye on that. You keep your eye on that. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram. Be sure to rate and review the podcast. Helps us out greatly. Thank you to all of our listeners who continue to get a hold of us and let us know your thoughts, suggestions, comments, and all the feedback so far has been super positive.
Word.
I know, I love it.
I've been really
it's phenomenal. Thank you so much, guys.
The weekly
and
emails,
gals.
I'm getting way more weekly emails now, which is super cool. It's nice to catch up with everybody. And if it does take me a little bit to get back to you, just give me a couple of days.
Yeah, because Mark is a one-man operation.
I got to hit up all
I'm
the
remedial
socials and everything
with technology. I'm just a guy that likes monster stories.
I know.
That's just about it.
So thank you for all of your continued support. We appreciate it greatly, and we'll be talking to you next week.
Laters.
And just don't trust the skinny things. And if you do, try to have a GoPro so you know if you're being taken to rescue a loved one or if you're going to be devoured. Because the rest of us really need to know.
Yeah, don't make a deal with a tree.
Fear the tree.
Burn the tree.
Yeah, no, something's wrong. I want to know about this fucking tree.
Burn it.